Hello, ladies and gentlemen. It's Zach here. Uh, Playoff position, Minnesota Twins GM, thanks to Rippo, of course, but my Orioles are also in contention, so I get the credit for that. At least that's what I've been told. But we're not here to talk about that today. Just going to go through the trade deadline starting here on July 28th and work through all the trades that were made. Looks like, I don't know, probably 20 or so of them. Just going to give my thoughts on them real quick, get some Sky content out there. So we'll start here first. St. Louis and Portland made a trade on the 28th, the only one of that sim. St. Louis gave up draft picks, it looks like, for Christopher Betancourt and cash to cover the salary. Betancourt was good with St. Louis. Betancourt went to Portland, obviously, not the other way around. But he's been really bad in 12 games, but it's a small sample size. Yeah, switch to OSA, I guess. Uh, Got to see what picks he gave up, I guess. Sorry, my dog's going to be playing in the background probably. So Betancourt, he gave up a 4, 6, and 15 um, for him, uh, fully paid. So no salary taken on, but he did give up a fair amount. Betancourt has been good prior to the switch to 24, but he looks like just a mediocre first baseman to me now. Considering what we'll get to later, what I gave up for the Yankees first baseman, I think this is probably a slight overpay for Portland. I also don't really buy that Portland is a good team. I know their record's okay, but I would give this trade a win for Higgs. Next up here, we got Julius Poole going to Cincinnati. He's a relief pitcher. He can start if needed. This is actually a guy that I inquired about with Ryan, but it was too late. He was already traded. I didn't realize. He's just whatever. He's not going to impact anything one way or the other. He's probably better as a starter, to be honest. His bars are okay as a reliever. Um, but just a middle reliever doesn't really change anything in regards to the long term for either side. The Reds are, I'm going to say, not make the playoffs, so I don't fully understand why he did this trade, but he only gave up a fifth round pick. So it's probably fine for both sides. But I would give the win to Ryan if I had to choose a side. Next up here, we have a Casey Matt special, a big trade here. So going to Kansas City, Bobby Brundage. He's was really good in the past in 24, and now in 25, he's just a guy. Um, let's see what his contracts. He's making 16 million, so I would say this is more of a dump than a value. He also got third baseman Don Young, another just average player. Hasn't really been good before. This is a classic guy that dusts and dumps off and then doesn't do shit. So no value for Kansas City yet. Then he also got Jake Sacco, probably the best player that Kansas City received anyway. He was really bad in Minnesota 2 years ago. He was pretty good for Dustin so far. He can probably play shortstop in a pinch if he's going to hit enough. If has a 730 OPS, he can probably play short. Um, he's an okay guy, 24, multiple years of team control. And then Seattle got Erwin Bombara and then flipped him to San Diego, which we'll get to in a little bit. Bombara has always been a guy with good bars, but hasn't really been a very good pitcher. Um, so I guess we'll see what he got for Bombara to send to San Diego. He could be good in Petco Park, but I probably wouldn't count on it. He's expiring, so it's whatever, fully retained. Uh, Dustin also got Grady Botello. I guess he's out for the year now. I don't know if he was out when the trade was made or not, if it was just for money purposes, but I'm gonna ignore that guy, I guess. Looks like shit anyway. Joseph Horn also went to Seattle. He's a middle infielder. He hasn't played. He's also out for the rest of the year. So Dustin really got fucked on this trade, I guess, but not really because of what he gave up, but just everybody he acquired is hurt. There was also some other guys involved in the trade. Amar Garcia went to Seattle. He's another middle infielder, probably just a bench role. This trade looks like a big nothing burger so far. Uh, Harry Riva went to Seattle. He caught for Kansas City, was really bad. Has never really been good in his career. And then Skylar Chara was acquired by Seattle. He's a corner outfield prospect. He looks okay to OSA, looks okay to my scout. He's putting up really good numbers at A plus, but I don't know why he's playing there. But probably not a needle mover in this deal. And yeah, that looks like that was all that was in the trade. That trade looks like nothing. It does not matter at all. I would say Kansas City side is probably better just because the guys that Dustin acquired are all injured now. And then Seattle, like we said, flipped Bombara to San Diego. Let's see what he gave up. He gave up a seventh rounder, so I think that's a fair deal for both sides. Like I said, I don't have a lot of faith in either guy. And then here's a guy that JP tried to pawn off on me, right-handed out or left-handed outfielder, corner outfielder, Neil Smith. He's a good right fielder. He hasn't really amounted to much in Petco, but it is such a pitcher's friendly park that maybe he'll find a new gear in Philly. He is more of an OBP over power guy, but he does have a 408 slug. His stats look like what they should be. He's probably gonna OPS somewhere in the 730 to 760 range, depending on the year. He's not gonna hit for a ton of power. He does have some speed, but looks like just a platoon guy. Let's see where he's gonna slot in the Phillies lineup. So his outfield already looks. I guess Marty Booz has been kind of bad, but I would still start Booz over Neil Smith probably. And then Sims is obviously going to continue to start, as is Powell. You're not going to bench him. And Copa has been even better than Powell, I would argue. So let's see what Trent gave up here. He only gave up a sixth and an eighth, so I think it's probably fine for Trent. He gets some depth in the outfield, maybe a platoon bat with Booz, gets on base. He probably bat him leadoff or even hit him ninth. It'll be interesting to see how Trent utilizes him. Next up, we have the spinach deal. Obviously, just a complete fucking disaster of a deadline for the Falcons. I don't know what David was doing. He was showing off children's like patience in the spinach. Just the entire handling of him was poor to give him that big of a deal. I mean, let's look at the contract here. 28 million, 23 million, 22 million, 30 million, 62 million. He's retaining 25% of that. 25% of 165. That's a lot of money. Not a math major, but I know enough for that. That it's just a terrible deal. He did recoup some draft value, but like he obviously hasn't been what he's been in the past, but it's not like he was a disaster. He definitely should have held on to him, not just thrown him right into the middle reliever role. I'm interested to see how he's used for Mikey. I would start him. But I don't know that Mikey will. I think he will. That's what I would do anyway. He still has good peripherals. His home run nine are up quite a bit, but that's you're going to see that across the board, as has been mentioned across Slack plenty of times. That he's still been a fine pitcher. His Sierra is 3.2. This is a great deal for Mikey. Obviously, the contract plays into the deal somewhat, but it's still just a disaster of a situation for Fred, as we'll get to later. Just one of the worst deadlines we've seen in Sky history, I would say. Next up, Trent acquiring more pitching. He gets Quentin Arndt from Oakland. Arndt hasn't been real good this year. He's been good in the past coming out of the bullpen, but he was used as a starter for Oakland this year. Has not found nearly the same results that he has. I'm guessing Trent's going to have to use him as a starter. The bars still look okay, but as we've seen in OOTP 25, it doesn't necessarily mean anything. He doesn't strike out a lot of guys. He's giving up a shit ton of home runs. So this guy's probably like a back end starter or a solid middle reliever, maybe a setup guy. Next up, we have my trade with New York. I think one of the bigger deals that went down, obviously, probably outside of the Fresno deals, the biggest deal that went down I got two relievers. Tony Colton, I don't know why he's set to a starter for me. He's going to be a reliever. I just needed another right-handed option. My bullpen was very left-handed heavy. He's a swing man. He's pitching way over his head. He's not going to his ERA might keep up, but this WAR and RWAR is definitely overinflated just because of the innings that he's pitched. Looks like New York was mainly using him as a starter and a reliever. That's the same role I'll have him in. Don't expect him to be a huge difference maker. He is expiring after this year, but let's see if he won't extend. Not a big deal to me. I don't know if I would have anyway. But he's just a middle reliever. Hopefully, give me some more innings. And then the better reliever that I got, Neville Mahaffey. Um, he has not pitched well this season. He didn't really pitch well last year for Cleveland either. Um, he's walking a lot of guys. His home runs are actually way down this year, which is surprising to be pitching that bad. But he's kind of getting Babbitt to death. He has 3 years straight, 331, 406, 367. I don't know how the defenses are that he pitched in front of, but my defense is really good, so I'm counting on that. I'm kind of normalizing a little bit. He's going to be set as a middle reliever with a setup secondary for me. I have Gabriel McClanahan at the back end of my bullpen, so I needed another right-handed option that was going to be able to get righties out late. He's actually better against lefties um, because of that awesome changeup and curveball. But just another depth piece for my bullpen. And then the star of the trade, Jimmy Miramontes, probably the best or one of the best hitters moved at the deadline. He's just a consistent, 3 to 5 WAR player. He gets on base a lot. He's running a 363 OBP this season. He's hit 300 the last 2 years. He's on pace to do that again. He got the boost with the stealing this year. Obviously, that's not going to keep up like it had been, but I'll let him run. He's a captain off the field. He's going to hit probably second for me. I have Lon White hitting first right now, who is just running an insane OBP because his eye is really high. Miramontes is going to play first. He's an upgrade over White defensively, so that'll make my top defense even better. But I think one of the best bats that was moved at the deadline hopefully will add to my kind of lackluster offense here. Next up, just another disaster of a trade for Fresno. We know that what Zach Pryor was acquired for. Um, he actually outperformed expectations to what I would say many had for him when that trade went down. I know that Dave took a lot of slack for that, but it actually ended up being a pretty good deal. But then he turns around and flips him for basically nothing. He's on pace for 5 WAR, and he doesn't even get a first rounder out of him. He gets a third-round pick and two prospects that we'll look at. Just a great deal by Jake. A great deal. And he does have another year of arbitration, so it's not even an expiring guy. The two prospects he gave up, Troy Grudison, looks like an okay prospect, but he's 21 at rookie ball. Only 45 potential. He's doesn't have any power, so not a guy that should be headlining a deal. And then we have Aroldis Azaza, just another guy. He's like power over hit tool for sure. Let's see. My scout has him 40 contact, as does OSA. So this is a guy that's probably going to hit like 50 home runs one year, and then the next year he's going to hit 25 and run like an OBP of like 250. So not a guy that I would be counting on. So just another bad deal for Dave, in my opinion. Let's look how Pryor's going to slot into the Montreal order here. I'm guessing he's going to hit leadoff. I guess he has Daryl Henderson hitting leadoff right now. He's running a really high BABIP for some reason, despite modest eye, modest contact. So right now at second, he is playing CJ Mossy. Good looking player, but definitely an upgrade over him. So I would expect Pryor to hit first or second and add to Montreal, make a playoff push. The team stats, they're only 7th in OBP, 10th in slugging. He won't help a ton in slugging, but should get that OBP up a little bit. So I really like that addition for Montreal. Next up, another good first baseman moved here. Echo Warren to San Diego, former Oriole farmhand. traded to D-Rich, obviously. Warren hasn't been what many expected him to be. I guess I was on splits only. He's been a fine first baseman. Crushes lefties. He's hitting out of his mind this year. I don't know what the Vancouver Park looks like, but he'll probably be hurt by going to Petco somewhat. And then he also got right-handed reliever Jerome Logan, uh, who looks good bars wise, and he's been effective in previous years. He's running nearly a 5 ERA this year, despite career high in K per nine. His home run nine is really up. San Diego should improve him uh, somewhat anyway. To acquire him, JP gave up reliever Paul Gregg. Um, he's been bad. I'm guessing this guy was just salary match. I definitely like the reliever that JP got over the reliever um, that Ryan got. And then Juan Medina. This guy looks like he would have been really good in OTP 23. Seems like this player profile is maybe making a comeback with the surge in power. You don't have to place as much of a premium on power only bats that we saw in 24. When pitching was so overpowered, now it seems like anyone can hit for 15 or 20 homers. So I do like this addition to the farm system of the Cascades. I would call this a pretty even trade. I am surprised we saw JP add on kind of a headline name player. Didn't expect it. Scott McGinnis, another just depth move for the Expos. He's going to factor into the bullpen for Montreal. Let's see what he gave up. Gave up a fifth round pick, so a little more than I was expecting, but to pry him from another team that's contending, that's probably a fair trade for both sides. Another reliever addition for Trent. Trent was one of the more active GMs at the deadline. You'd love to see it. I'm rooting for him to land on his division again. Aiden Cohen has been one of the better relievers in Sky the last few years. Actually, throughout his career, he's regressing a little bit this year, but as I've said throughout this, that's nearly every reliever has done so. His walks are the main thing that are up, nearly double from what they were last year. His home runs are, up a full home run. His K per nines are down a little bit, but I think this is a guy that can factor in late in games, in the playoffs. So to get him for just a fourth round pick, I think is a good piece of business for Trent and the Phillies. I am a little surprised to see that. Caleb Drew from Oakland, he's out for a majority of the rest of the year. So I only gave up a ninth round pick. He struggled mightily last year in Baltimore, which was very surprising considering the park, but he's been very consistent throughout his career. He was bad in 2049, but that was mainly due to injury. And he was bad in 2052. But outside of that, he's been a perennial 3 to 4 WAR player. So I felt like pick that up for just the ninth round pick was a nice underrated under the radar deal by me. He's not a great second baseman, but he's better than Haftel, who I'm running out there now, or prospect Troy Shed. Neither have really um, taken a hold of the position. So when Drew is back and healthy, he's going to start there at least against right-handed pitchers. Against lefties, I might shift Drew to DH or first base, just because both of those previous mentioned second basemen are right-handed and they can hold their own a little bit more. But Drew's been a good player this year. Just needs to get healthy. He'll factor in for maybe the last few weeks of the season and then the postseason. If the Twins do manage their way to get there, which I believe Stats Plus gives us like a 60% chance at right now. And then we have a few moves by Yortlab. Another Fresno deal here. I actually didn't mind this one for Dave at all. Jared Bernath, he has not really been good this year. He was okay last year, but it wasn't setting the world on fire, and he was really bad 2 seasons ago. I believe he got a fourth round pick out of this. Yeah, he did get a fourth round pick out of this. For a guy that is a good, not great reliever, I definitely like the Cohen pickup for a fourth rounder. I think I would maybe give like a sixth or seven for this guy. What's his contract status? He's expiring after this year too. I think this is probably the best deal excuse me, best deal that Fred pulled off at the the deadline. Then another just terrible deal by David. Caleb Rutter, center fielder. He's a plus defender in center field, at least range wise. His arm isn't great, but he's going to track down every ball. He's not going to miss play balls, and his hitting bars are okay. He's switch hitter, so you don't have to platoon him at all. He's making the league minimum for this year and next year, and then he has 2 years of arbitration. If not another, I'm not sure if he's going to hit 2 years of service time this year or not. Um, but I don't think this is a guy that should have gotten a first round pick. But I definitely think if you put this guy in the block in the offseason, uh, you're going to get more than just a second round pick. And it was the second round pick that Jakob acquired for Miramontes. So he essentially flipped Miramontes for some later picks and the second rounder, which he turned into Caleb Rutter, which is probably the best trade tree that you're going to find in this draft. You're not going to find anything better than that. Getting a controllable, young, go get the ball center fielder for a guy that's going to expire at the end of the year. But just another loss for the Falcons at the deadline, in my opinion. The Royals added on Regan Poor. He is whatever. I don't really know what's going on with this trade. Um, so Kansas City sent a second and got a fourth and fifth to take on Poor. He's expiring. So I don't know what, like mini Matt trades, I don't know what this was. The Royals are, what's their record? They're 52 and 56. They are in the West, so they have a chance, but or sorry, they do have a chance. But I don't get it. He only moved back a few spots in the draft, a few rounds, I should say. But are you really expecting to make the postseason? This just seems like making a trade to make a trade to me. I probably like the Oakland side more, but pretty indifferent on it. Then another Oakland trade, Andy really active at this deadline. The A's really fell out of it. As we know, we've seen him talk about in Slack yesterday and today. He sent Mikey Whitcomb to Baltimore. Baltimore's pitching has been really poor this season, but somehow they've been competitive. Whitcomb is probably just a middle of the rotation guy. Like you're fine with him taking the ball in game four of a playoff series, but you don't want him to be your best pitcher or second best pitcher. He doesn't strike anybody out, especially in this version. And his home run rate has doubled. He's going to be pitching in a hitter-friendly ballpark. Baltimore needed pitching, so I'm fine with the deal. There wasn't really a lot out there, especially at the time when Yortlab became active, because he was busy calling a baseball game, actually, from what I saw. He gave a fourth, sixth, and ninth for Whitcomb. Uh, that's for an expiring pitcher. That's a little rich for my blood, but like I said, there was not a lot out there when he hit the trade market. Um, so it's probably fine. So yeah, if the Orioles get into the playoffs, their rotation is going to be like Victor Kennedy, uh, Zachary Watson, Jay Gordon, and the guy he just acquired, Mickey Whitcomb, which is not going to strike fear in anybody. But in this version of OTP, God knows what's going to happen. Um, we see the finish line in sight now. Just a few more trades. The Mets acquired two outfielders from the Astros, Emmanuel Gonzalez. He has good bars, was really good in 24, 25 is killed him a little bit, but he still has 827 OPS. I wonder what position Sterling was playing him at. So he was playing him at first and a little bit in the outfield. He's not good anywhere. Uh, his OBP is really high. His slug is pretty high. I think if the Mets can DH him, I like this pickup. He's a switch hitter as well. Then you got another corner outfielder, the better one of the two in this trade, at least bars wise, Michael Dodson. This is actually a guy that I inquired on, and he asked for a sixth, which I didn't have it. I think he traded them both for a seventh, so should have answered him, I guess. Um, this guy looks good bars wise, but he hasn't really amounted to anything. So bars wise, I like it. Stats wise, it's whatever. Value wise, I like the Mets side. So here we have Vancouver trading Jesse Cochran to the Blues. Cochran's been on the block basically for the past week or so. He's a really good catcher, um, or at least has been. He has been a good again this year, mid 700s OPS, which makes it like a top five catcher in the file. Defensively, he's not the best, but he's not going to kill you either. I don't know why Orion was so eager to move him. Doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me. I mean, Ryan is in the thick of things for the most part. He did get a third and a fifth for an expiring guy. I'm guessing he just wasn't planning on re-signing him and wanted to cash in for a bit of value. But I think I would have taken the next 50 games or whatever over those picks and hope to make a run at it. But value wise, I think it's fine for both sides. And then we have clearing space for Cocker and Joshua Massengill, who is a former Astro going back to the Astros where he had a ton of success in the prior version of the game. He hasn't been good in 24. Um, his average is down. His OBP is about where it used to be, but he just isn't hitting for the same power that he was. But he's a good player. You got him for a 10th round pick. Uh, he's expiring. I like this for the Astros. Are the Astros good? I want to say no. They're 51 and 57, so probably not going to factor into a postseason. But anytime you can bring a, team legend, so to speak, back, I'm a fan of it. I don't know what the deal is with that trade. So it looks like that's all the trades we have. I would say the biggest winner of the deadline is probably the Expos. They added on um, a few relievers that are pretty good. They added on Pryor, obviously, who is probably the best player that got moved at the deadline. I would say anyway, when you factor in the team control that he has remaining and he didn't give up a lot to get him. I also like the Phillies deadline. Trent was active and aggressive. Um, so it's always fun to see that. I like the additions that I made, but I'm a little biased, so I'm not gonna name myself as the winner. The loser of the deadline is painfully obvious, at least in my opinion. It has to be Fresno, just the handling of the contract, the trading for basically just to get off the contract, yet you're still retaining money. Um, Another guy that I was a little disappointed in was Sly. We didn't mention his name at all. He's leading the North, 62 and 46, and he didn't make any moves. I mean, he's not a guy that's won a lot, so when guys like me and Sly have an opportunity to win, it's always fun to see them add on. He didn't do that, um, which was disappointing. The Braves had a quieter deadline than I expected. The Marlins didn't do much despite having a fantastic run differential. The Ignition didn't do anything. Um, the Indians, surprisingly, DH Errol has always been fairly active in the trade market. He's been quiet, but the East is just so much of a clusterfuck that I think it was hard for some of these GMs to balance the risk of going for it and not sabotaging your future. Um, the West, I would have wished some of these fringe GMs took the bull by the horns and made a run in it. Like we saw JP do that a little bit, despite him maintaining his stance that his team is pretenders. He hit it on a few pieces, so that's always fun. He's a GM that's not afraid to push the chips in when there's an opportunity. The D-backs are trying to sell. Vancouver did some adding and selling, which we already talked about being a little weird. And then yeah, so that's my thoughts on the trade deadline, winners and losers. It'll be fun to watch the stretch of this season. Go Twins.